What is up, sports bettors far and wide, and welcome on into another edition of the Fast Five, presented as always by the fine folks over at Superbook Sports. Summertime is basically here. The NBA finals are here. The NHL finals are here. And it's a great time to be a sports fan and, of course, a sports bettor. Be sure to go ahead and get those bets in with our good friends over at Superbook Sports. Best odds, best prices, and a ton of different markers that you can choose from with our good friends over at Superbook Sports. So be sure to download that app, get a deposit in today, and away we go. But I'm AP, located in the lovely Mile High City, home of maybe the future NBA champion Denver Nuggets, and my friend Unit back in Las Vegas, where the Vegas Golden Knights are looking to win a Stanley Cup championship as well. What's going on, buddy?
Yeah, we might both be experiencing some praise this year.
I hope so, man. I mean, I was just out there in Vegas with you for about 15 minutes before we drove to LA for Game 4. And we know that ever since hockey has become a thing in Vegas, the Golden Knights fans are as passionate as they can, get. And, the overall energy and excitement around that is fantastic. We'll talk about that in the show. And then I got it all locked in here for us in Denver, Colorado. The Nuggets actually just had their NBA, well, not just the Nuggets, but the Heat as well, had their media day is what they're calling it. So you had the media had the opportunity to talk with all the different coaches and players and all that good stuff. And Nikola Jokic actually had some thoughts about the Nuggets being the favorites in this NBA Finals. So we'll dive into that.
Okay. Yeah, I did see that. So he was saying that there's no such thing as favorites in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'll pull up the exact quote, but you said it somewhat, pretty close there. He basically was like, it's the NBA Finals. There are no favorites. It's just when you get this far, you got to give kind of respect where, respect is due. Two good opponents. The quote is from Jokic. I think in the finals, there are no favorites. These are going to be the hardest games of our lives, and we know that there are no favorites in the finals, in my opinion. And look, my first season with the credential covering, the NBA and the Nuggets as a whole was Jokic's rookie season. And I actually just did a radio hit yesterday with someone outside of Colorado. And people are just now understanding how little outside information and outside praise and noise impacts Nikola Jokic. So, when he says he believes that there's no favorites, he believes that. When he talks about not caring about the MVP, he believes that. So a lot of intrigue around this NBA final, because you've got a number one seed in the Denver Nuggets who essentially blew past the competition en route to their first finals appearance in franchise history. And then on the flip side, you've got the Miami Heat, who were, I know you like to say the Chicago Bulls should be here instead of Miami with how close that play-in game went. But kind of like two opposite ends.
Sauter would have been able to skip school. The Bulls would be right here, right?
Yeah, that would have been, nice for you. But it is interesting where you have two teams that are kind of on opposite sides here. One in Denver who has lived up to expectations, clinched that one seed, have home court advantage throughout the postseason and now in the NBA final. And then a Heat team, which has had to face adversity, playing in the play-in, getting past Milwaukee, almost blowing that series against Boston. Two teams with kind of opposite paths to this point.
Yeah, I mean, to Jokic, what he said in your media day today, I don't expect him to be following, the sports betting side of this series. But, I mean, there is a favorite. The Nuggets are a massive favorite, and rightfully so. They're sitting at minus 425. I'm sure Jokic doesn't know that. I don't expect him to. I know he might follow some horse racing betting, but definitely not NBA.
Are you surprised at how steep the Nuggets are priced at? Like, I remember I was on Twitter, and this was when the Heat Celtics series was still going on. And I thought, regardless of the fact that Denver would be the favorite, but we actually found out, should it have been Boston and Denver, that maybe the Celtics would have been the slight favorite. And I was sitting here, I was like, okay, like maybe if that is the case, but the Heat are playing well, because you actually could have bet the Nuggets to win the final right around minus 130, minus 135 ahead of Game 7 between the Boston Celtics and the Miami Heat. Obviously, the Heat go on to win that final, and it's just been, to win that game, and it's just been crazy to see how the odds have just gone up and up and up and up. And we're looking at the Denver Nuggets, as you said, Unit, minus 425. They're the second biggest favorite in the NBA Finals in the last 16 years. The only other team that was priced higher than the Nuggets in the NBA Final was the 2018 Warriors, who are a whopping minus 1075. So I'm a little surprised at how steep this number is, but it's not surprising when you look at how good Denver has been and also kind of the unconventional path Miami's taken to get to this final.
Yeah, so the Nuggets have gained the respect now when you look at these series prices. So if you look at all the series prices throughout the playoffs, they were not even as big as a favorite as they are now when they played the Timberwolves. I think they were actually a slight underdog against the Suns, and then
Yep.
it was pretty close to a pick 'em in that Lakers series, since the Lakers were rolling. So now they're finally gaining that respect. So I think this is a deserving number. They're sitting at minus. I think we opened this at minus 360, quickly went to minus 400, and now it's kind of settled in at a comfortable spot at minus 425.
Yeah, and we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Obviously the Heat are a live team. They've had to win some pretty important games in impressive fashion in order to get here. And where you see, like I said, Denver, the second largest favorite in finals history over the last 16 years, like it's not uncharted territory, but for a team that has never climbed the mountaintop, I do think it's a little interesting. And then on the flip side here, you've got a Heat team. Erik Spoelstra, I believe, has been to the NBA Finals. This is the sixth time in his career. They've been in the conference final 3 of the last 4 years, in the NBA final now 2 of the last 4 seasons. So they're a dangerous team, and Jimmy Butler's a hell of a player. Should the Heat upset the Nuggets, it would be the largest finals upset since the Detroit Pistons, who were 5-1 underdogs, did so against the Los Angeles Lakers back in 2004. And for perspective, the Lakers were the minus 700 favorite, so almost double what Denver is in this series. So I don't think the Heat are, dead to rights in that sense, but you got to put some respect on Miami. And I agree with you that the odds and the public and the odds makers have caught up to Denver in regards to the hype. But the Heat are going to be a very competitive team, and I think they're going to, it's that Heat culture. They scratch and claw and just play and play and play until, the fat lady sings, for lack of a better phrase. So I think as a whole, Nuggets Heat's going to be a very fun matchup.
Yeah, exactly. You said it. I think the Heat are very comfortable in a position like this. They've been in these kind of situations all playoffs long. I mean, they were a play-in team and a play-in team that lost their first game and were a few minutes away from losing the second game and not even being in the position of being in the real playoffs. I think they're comfortable in this situation, and if there is a team that could do it, it's them. And right now, looking at it before the series has even started, all the value is on the Heat. So if you're looking to bet the series price, I mean, all the value is there. And if you're looking to bet the Nuggets, you're going to have to look in some of these other markets that I think that we're going to get into here soon.
Yeah, and it's funny because you bring up, betting the Nuggets, and you bring up the past series against Phoenix and the Lakers, where there were obviously much more favorable odds. And I find myself in the predicament of, I bet the Nuggets pre-series on the, series line against the Suns, won that. I rolled over what I won against Phoenix against LA, so I won that. So I'm like 2 series in a row, I got a little money to play with, but then I'm looking at these odds like at minus 425. And look, I think Denver's the better team. I think Denver's going to win this series, but even with that confidence, I'm not necessarily sure if the juice is worth the squeeze here. I mean, you'd have to lay $425 just to win $100. In comparison, I believe Denver was like minus 105 against Phoenix, minus 145-ish around, against the Lakers. So it's been, quite the increase, which is, to be expected given that it is the Miami Heat. And we talked about their path versus the Nuggets. But why don't we get into some of these NBA series props and different prices that are out and about? Because I think if you do like the Nuggets, lay in the minus 425 is not the best option. And if you want to kind of wait for the Nuggets to lose, I don't know if you want to wait for that opportunity either. If you want to get in a bet before the series, going exact series result, in my opinion, is probably the best way to bet it.
Yeah, if you're going to look to keep rolling over what you've done in the past series, you're going to have to look at some of those other markets. I think whether that's series spread or whether that's, the exact series result. I noticed right away, it jumps off the page, is the Nuggets in 5, which has got to be the consensus of a lot of people. That's sitting at plus 195 right now. But something that sticks out to me more is Nuggets in 4 at plus 425 or Nuggets in 6 at plus 425. And if you don't go in either of those directions, the only thing to me that looks attractive for maybe a potential sprinkle would be the Heat in 7 at sitting at 12-1 right now.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And if I had to bet the Heat in this series, I would probably go Heat in 7. It just feels like if they're going to win this series, it's going to take 7 games. Like, I think Denver can play well on the road if their backs are against the wall. So Heat in 7 at 12-1, in my opinion, is the way that I would bet it if I like Miami. But you mentioned Nuggets at 5, and there's a big discrepancy, between that and the other, exact series outcomes. You talked about it. Nuggets in 4 at plus 425, Nuggets in 6 at plus 425, and Nuggets in 7 at 4-1 odds. So there's quite a discrepancy with Nuggets in 5 at plus 195, but thinking logically, it kind of makes sense. You think Denver was able to beat Minnesota in 5 games. It took them 6 games against the Phoenix Suns, who were the betting favorite in the Western Conference. They swept the Lakers in 4 games as well. So Denver has been able to, make pretty quick work of most of their opponents really outside of Phoenix. And look, I think Miami's a good team. We've given them their respect as well. But you talk about how there was multiple instances over the course of this postseason where they were a bucket or two or a whistle or two away from just not being in this position at all. So I think Nuggets in 5 is the popular play for a reason. That's what my official prediction was, because I think, I've got enough respect for Miami to steal a game, but I think Denver's just the better team as a whole. So plus 195, if I had to, go exact series outcome, that's where I'm shooting my dart, which is not a bad price relative to the minus 425 series price as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. And when we were in LA talking to the fans outside the stadium, one of the guys that we had on video over a week ago, right away was picking the Nuggets in 5, the Heat. And then the Corgi that we've been following all playoffs long, I think the Corgi had Nuggets in 6.
Ooh, and I think
that what you will.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. Would it surprise me if this goes 6 or 7? No. And where I kind of lay back on it is, like I said, I got a lot of respect for Miami. I think Eric Spoelstra is the Mike Tomlin of the NBA in regards to a guy who always has his team ready to play, scrappy. They're always going to fight. That Heat culture that we've seen, develop really since Pat Riley got there, and now kind of the torch being passed over to Eric Spoelstra. But it is one of those situations where I just think Denver is not only the better team, but I think they faced better quality of competition to get to this point. I'm not trying to disrespect Miami when I say that, but you look at on the paper, the metrics. I think Phoenix is better than Miami. I think the Lakers are better than Miami and a little bit more versatile. So again, it's no disrespect to Miami, but I just think if Denver plays Denver Nuggets basketball with this layoff, I just think X's and O's, they match up very, very well against this Miami Heat team as well. So that's how I like it. And I agree with you. Nuggets in 5 is where I'm looking at plus 195. And like I said, it could go 6 or 7. Would it surprise me? No. But I just think if Denver takes care of business like we know how they can, they should be able to, finish this series off in relatively short order.
Yeah, I feel like everybody has been saying this about the Heat, though, that they're not one of the best teams in the playoffs. I know you mentioned the Suns are probably a better team, but look at the Heat. The Heat are still here. I mean, I think they've had some pretty tough matchups too in this playoffs, and they're the ones still standing. I think, Spoelstra has got to be, if not the best coach in the league, one of the best coaches in the league. They've had some guys step up in big moments like Caleb Martin. The Heat just keep on rolling. So, I even myself, I keep expecting them to fall off, and it just hasn't happened yet. So I definitely would not be shocked if they keep it rolling, despite it being a pretty good matchup for the Nuggets, and the Nuggets continue rolling. Brings up the question of rest versus rust. I know that's been a hot topic this week. Is that going to affect the Nuggets, or is it going to affect the Heat, or is it going to have no difference?
Yeah, and kind of reading between the lines, I think it was Jeff Green who was asked about this yesterday at Nuggets media availability. Maybe it affects them for a quarter, maybe it affects them for a few minutes, but there's a lot of comparison, or the notion that's being thrown out in Colorado of comparing this Nuggets team to that of the October Rockies back in 2007. Remember, they blew past every single team en route to the World Series, had a massive layoff, and ended up getting swept by the Boston Red Sox in the World Series. The difference is we're talking about a Rockies team that I want to say won 21 of 22 games down the stretch to be in that position in the first place, compared to a Nuggets team that has been the best team in the Western Conference since, the turn of the calendar in 2023. And the other part of it is too, baseball to me is a sport that really requires the rhythm to kind of stay in that flow and stay consistent. Whereas basketball, I feel like, like I said, give them a few minutes, give them a quarter, and they should be able to kind of find that rhythm and flow on the court. And I just think they're a better team. And so you bring up the rest versus rust factor. Eric Spoelstra came out today and was talking about, we could play this game on Mount Everest. He doesn't want to hear about the altitude being a factor in this series. And the Heat are a no excuse, no nonsense organization. And I don't think that they're going to look at the altitude as a massive hurdle for them to jump in order to win this series. They believe in themselves. They believe in their ability. And I think the Denver Nuggets are the same way. And I personally don't believe the rest versus rust factor will play a big role in deciding this series as a whole. Maybe it plays a role in games 1 or 2, but as the whole series goes on, I think you'll see both teams adjust.
Yeah, and it's not like they're jumping directly into this series. The Heat, just being in the game 7, obviously they've had less time to recover, but they still have a few days. I think that they're going to be just fine, and I think that's probably just a topic of conversation for the media, and it probably won't have much of an effect on either of the players. I mean, any of the players, because these guys are professionals. They're used to this stuff. They play basketball for a living, and the Heat are a team that, they're built different. They're a tough team, and a well-coached team. So I don't see it having much of a problem or an effect on the Heat.
Yeah, me too. And a little behind-the-scenes inside information, for what it's worth, is I was at Nuggets media availability yesterday. I don't know, what was it? Maybe maybe like 2:30 in the afternoon, I want to say. And I was going to go out with my buddy Ryan Blackburn, who covers the Nuggets for us here at MileHighSports.com. And we were going to go out like on the court and do like, a post-practice video, post-session video, like what did we learn? And the curtains were down in the Miami Heat at like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, getting after it, practicing, doing their thing, and getting ready for this series. So less than 24 hours removed from being the Boston Celtics in Game 7 in Boston, they're in Denver, getting acclimated, working on their scheme and their situations to be ready for this Game 1 and beyond. So for whatever that's worth, Miami has been in Denver for quite some time, and they're locked in and ready to go. So I'm excited for this series to get underway. And let's transition here to potential finals MVP. And we start with the big fella, Big Honey, Nikola Jokic, the Joker. Once again, the overwhelming favorite at minus 375 to win finals MVP. Let's start there. Do you agree with the price? And do you think that there's anybody outside of Nikola Jokic that's worth betting on for finals MVP?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of the same way when you look at the series price. There's no value on Jokic at that price, and it is deserved because, one, he's probably the best player in the world, and he's been dominating all playoffs long, and I expect him to do so here, especially if the Nuggets win, then he's going to have a huge part of it. And, I mean, looking at the conference finals, the way the voters were, even though I felt like Caleb Martin was probably the MVP of that Eastern Conference series, they still gave it to Jimmy Butler because he's the most recognizable name and probably the best player on the team. So I feel like that alone is an advantage, just being the best player on the team. Also, if you're going to look further down the list for a player with any value, I would say Jamal Murray. I mean, he has gone off in a ton of times throughout this series in the playoff. He's sitting at 12-1 right now. To me, that's the only thing that jumps off the page as some value when it comes to betting on the NBA Finals MVP.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, I'm not going to lay the minus 375 with Jokic, but I think it's priced accordingly. I mean, if you like the Heat, you might as well take a look at Jimmy Butler at plus 350, but I completely agree with you. If there's a value play outside of Nikola Jokic for NBA Finals MVP, it's got to be Jamal Murray to win Finals MVP. I mean, we're talking about a guy that has really burst onto the scene here in the last month or so throughout the entirety of the NBA playoffs, scoring, passing, making an impact with the ball in his hand and when it's not in his hand. I think Jamal Murray at 12-1 odds to win Finals MVP is absolutely positively worth shooting a dart on. I mean, looking at his performance against the Lakers, I mean, 25 points, 37 points, 37 points, 31 points. I mean, he was just a walking bucket. And now he's on everybody's radar. Like, that's the thing, is people know the name Jamal Murray, maybe not as much as they know Nikola Jokic, but people are looking for him because Jokic is kind of more that reserve superstar. Like, I know a lot of people like to talk about, oh, Jokic isn't fun to watch. He passes. He's not flashy. You know who's flashy? Jamal Murray. You know who's exciting? Jamal Murray. And I think at 12-1 odds, because if Denver's going to win this series, you know Jamal Murray is going to pop off. And Jokic is obviously going to be the driving force and the catalyst of this offense. But if Denver wins this series, it's going to be Jokic here and Jamal Murray not too far behind him. So I think a 12-1 odds on Jamal Murray is not a bad idea. And let's say that Jamal pops off in games 1, 2, and 3, and Jokic is just playing decent but not great. It might also set up a hedge opportunity for you. Maybe some juice comes down on Jokic from the minus 325, 375, whatever it is, and you have a 12-1 Murray ticket. Maybe you get a better price on Jokic, and boom, you got Murray and Jokic, and you can win either way. So I like the value on Murray at 12-1.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's an even more value at Superbook at 12-1 because I know I saw Murray 8-1 elsewhere.
Ooh, I love that. Well,
so make sure you do your shopping and you'll end up at Superbook.
Yeah, I like that. That's the only thing that jumped off the page for me. I mean, looking down the line, you got like Caleb Martin 50-1, Bam 40-1, MPJ at 80-1. I have a soft spot for MPJ. I just think he's a walking bucket. We just haven't seen the usage to justify it. Maybe I'll put $5 on MPJ at 80-1 just for fun. But yeah, Jamal is the way that I'm looking outside of Jokic. So looking forward to that, man. I'm excited. City's buzzing. You know, I got a buddy who's flying out for Boston if there is a game 5 to come watch that here locally. Ticket prices are going crazy. I've seen more Nugget shirts than I've ever seen in my lifetime out here. People are selling the final shirts outside of Rockies games. So the energy is at an all-time high. Good time to be a Colorado sports fan and a Colorado sports bettor. Not a good time to be a Boston sports fan because the Boston Celtics, following in the footsteps a little bit of the Boston Bruins, losing a game 7 to advance to the NBA final on their home court. Remember, the Boston Bruins, who had one of, if not the best regular season we've seen from a hockey team in recent memory, lost a game 7 to the Florida Panthers on their home ice. Rough time for the Boston sports fan.
Yeah, I don't feel one bit bad for them at all. I mean, in our lifetimes, we've seen the Celtics win championships. We've seen the Patriots win a million championships. We've seen the Bruins win championships. We've seen the Red Sox win championships. I think the Boston fans have no reason to complain about this because they have seen the most success of pretty much any other city in sports. I think they deserve 100 more years of this exact same thing.
You would think you're talking about the Green Bay Packers with your disdain towards the Boston sports fan, but I agree with you. They've been the team of our lifetimes, and you and I are in our mid-20s and whatnot. Like, I don't know the NFL without Tom Brady. Obviously, the way that he did what he did for the Patriots. You mentioned the Celtics. Anything's possible. Kevin Garnett. Boston has won their fair share. We've seen the Red Sox do their thing. I actually have no disdain whatsoever towards the Boston sports scene. Like, I'm not a Yankee fan, so I was always, kind of rooting for the Red Sox when they were on their run. The Celtics are a fun team, in my opinion, so I don't have that disdain. I'm not a Bronco fan, so I didn't grow up hating Brady, but they've done enough winning. Yeah. I think that I can stomach some losing and some tough times for the Boston.
I don't think it's disdain for me. It's just I'm not going to feel bad for a team that has dominated a sports city that's dominated for almost my entire lifetime. I don't feel bad for you.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And, I put it in the notes, like, is there a team or a sequence of losing that, is kind of because, you're talking about 2 Game 7s here. And for the Bruins, who are one of the best teams in the NHL, and a Celtics team that was near the top of the leaderboards for NBA Finals all year. Like, the only things that come to mind for me are like the Philadelphia sports scene over the last couple of years, like Phillies runner-up. We've seen some of these, the soccer team in the MLS, the Eagles, which I loved. That's the only other thing. And then Buffalo going to 4 Super Bowls in a row in the 90s and losing all 4. That's pretty much all that comes to mind for me in regards to.
Yeah, definitely. The first thing I think of, especially in recent history, has got to be Philadelphia losing those 3 pro championships in just a year, and then the Sixers in the playoffs kind of hitting a brick wall. They've got good teams, but just not good enough teams.
Yeah, it's tough. I feel bad for the Bills fan, man. I couldn't imagine going to 4 in a row. Like, you got to get one, right? Like, you're thinking like, oh, 3rd time's a charm. Like, we got this one. You lose that one. Oh, 4th time. We can't lose 4 in a row, can we? Boom.
It's not easy being a sports fan. It's not easy. Unless you're a Boston fan, then it's easy.
Yeah, and that's why I have this much sympathy, 0 sympathy for the Boston sports fan. But let's move along here. Stanley Cup final, you mentioned it. Games are going to be played in your hometown. Well, not your hometown, but where you're living right now of Las Vegas, Nevada. And unlike the NBA finals, we've got a much more competitive series from a betting perspective. You got the Vegas Golden Knights, a team that's, recently expanded and whatnot. Price is the -130 favorite in this series, and the comeback on the Florida Panthers, maybe a team of destiny, the slight underdog at +110. How's Vegas? What's the scene like, and what's your overall opinion on this series?
Yeah, the other night, right when the Golden Knights clinched their 2nd Stanley Cup in team history, which has only been a short 6 years. I was just sitting on my balcony, and for about an hour after the game, I could just hear fireworks pretty much constantly for like an hour. It's fun when the Stanley Cup is old historic teams, the original 6 teams, but now we've got 2 new age teams, the Panthers not being that old, and then the Golden Knights only in their 6 years. But I still think this is a very exciting series, 2 pretty evenly matched teams, a Cinderella team like the Panthers, who only got into the playoffs because the Blackhawks beat the Penguins at the end of the regular season. You got as hot as it gets goaltender right now, Bobrovsky. That's what you need in the playoffs is a hot goaltender at the right time. But the Golden Knights keep winning. They keep coming through in these series and getting some big help from their 4th line, and all the lines have been coming together and playing really well, and they're coming out with wins. So I think this is going to be a super exciting series, despite what people say online about it's a boring market. I don't think any of that matters. I'm still going to be watching, and it's still going to be fun, and there's still plenty of buzz in Vegas. And really, I'm expecting this series to go pretty deep. I don't know who's going to win it, but I wouldn't be shocked if this is another 7-game series, and it's going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah, I love that. And there's just nothing like the NHL postseason. And I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm a casual hockey fan. Like, I don't know nearly as much about the NHL as I do the NBA, MLB, NFL. I can give a damn if it's original 6 teams. Like, I think the idea of Vegas being back in the Stanley Cup final, after a handful of years, and obviously the Cinderella ride that is the Florida Panthers, like, I love that. And the fact that it's not Montreal or Boston or Chicago, or some of these original six teams doesn't impact me. And I know I've seen a lot of the hockey purists that, feel that type of way and whatnot, but I love this matchup. And I love it, especially from a betting perspective, because like I said, the odds are relatively even. Golden Knights at -130 and Florida at +110. I'm going to just ride the hot hand. And I mean, obviously both of these teams have been playing well. And I agree with you. I think that I'd be surprised if the series is under 6 or 7 games. But I think I'm just going to take a flyer, throw a little pizza money on the Florida Panthers before the series starts, and let the chips fall where they may. I mean, there's nothing like the hockey playoffs. And for somebody, if you're like me, or maybe you haven't watched a lot of hockey postseason or hockey in general, this is the time to start watching, because you're guaranteed fireworks, like Unit said, between the Florida Panthers and the Las Vegas Golden Knights. And I love that these odds are priced the way that they are too.
Yeah, I think probably the only reason that the Knights have that minus next to their short number is that they've got the home ice advantage.
Right.
But from a betting perspective, I think it might be a good idea to maybe wait a game and see who loses that first game, because I expect all of these games to be so close. I'm sure there's going to be a handful of OT games. I might just, take the series price on whoever loses game one, maybe even loses game two.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea either. And when you kind of have the luxury of patience, a little bit in that sense, especially when it's so close. Like, that's the thing. It's like, if you think the Nuggets are going to lose game one and they win game one, they're going to be like -600, when it's all said and done for game two. You got a little bit of flexibility there in the NHL with the Stanley Cup Finals. So I am excited, my friend. Like I said, there's nothing like the NHL playoffs, and we got good teams, good odds to bet on over at SuperBook Sports.
Yes, sir. That's one of the best parts about the playoffs is being able to bet these series prices, and as the series goes on, still betting the exact results.
Yeah.
I know this time of year is one of the most underrated when it comes to sports, and I'm always checking my phone pretty much every morning when I wake up to see where these prices fall and see what value I can get.
You and me both, my friend. And speaking of betting and excitement, the NFL. We know it's the cream of the crop. Everybody loves the NFL. It's everybody's favorite sport to bet, mine included. You guys put out every single line up through week 18 of the regular season. I don't know if there's any other book in existence that's putting their lines up that early. But, OTAs are going on here in Denver. My colleague Cody Rourke is over there. I'm seeing tweets about Zach Wilson having awful OTAs with the Jets, even though he's no longer QB1. So football on the mind, and you've got all the odds for all the games already released over at SuperBook Sports.
Yeah, I thought Zach Wilson was going to be giving Aaron Rodgers hell in these OTAs.
He'll run for his money.
I guess that's not the story. But yeah, this is one thing that makes SuperBook so great is this time of year when we put up all the lines for the entire season. If you want to look ahead at your teams, I know I like looking at, my favorite team, the Bears, on here, see how many games they're favored and match that up with the regular season win total, or looking at my friends' teams and picking out some of these marquee matchups in the season. And a few of these teams, so I put together this grid that we put up on our social media that takes me quite a long time.
I can imagine.
In the past few years, so when I've done it, I've had a million mistakes, and I haven't found a mistake on this one yet. So if you find a mistake, let us know on social. Maybe I'll send you a SuperBook merch pack or something. But what one team sticks out when I was making this was the Cleveland Browns. It looks like they're favorites in 8 games, 2 pick'ems. And a lot of these numbers on here look like some pretty small spreads. I think the Browns are a pretty interesting team when you look at all 18 weeks. And a lot of that comes down to Deshaun Watson, who's going to be playing a whole season this year. And if he ends up being the quarterback that he was in Houston, it could be a pretty big year for the Browns. So that's probably the reasoning behind being favorites in so many games.
Yeah, I will gladly fade Cleveland. That's just kind of where my gut's always at with them. Poverty franchise that can't get out of its own way. You're telling me I could get decent money on the other side. I don't care who they're playing. I'll automatically, I had to talk myself into betting the Cleveland Browns. Now it's different from like 5 years ago when they sucked, and it was always fun to just take them as like a 21-point underdog. Now they're just, no go on Cleveland for me. But, some of the other lines that jump out to me, I'm looking at some week 1 lines. Obviously, the Broncos, they've got themselves a big season coming up. Sean Payton the first year, Russell Wilson kind of looking to bounce back after the worst season of his career. You got the Broncos laying 3.5 points against the Las Vegas Raiders, which I think is interesting. Obviously, a lot of mystique. Could Tom Brady be QB1 for the Las Vegas Raiders when it's all said and done come week 1? I don't think so. But that's one that's caught my eye. Detroit's obviously a fun team. They're getting 7 points on the road at Kansas City. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the Arizona Cardinals are not favored in any game, at least preseason so far.
No, they are not. It's all
Dogs
plus to their spreads. And I think looking at this grid, that they're the only team that is a double-digit underdog in any game. And it looks like they're in 2. That's in week 4. They're 10.5 dogs to San Francisco. And then in week 17, 11.5 to the Eagles.
Interesting. Well, we'll see how that plays out. Football is on the mind. College football, we found out the Colorado Buffaloes are going to get some televised games for the first 2 weeks of the season. Oh, I just had look at that. I'm not going to show my betting ticket, but I just had a winning bet from our friends over at SuperBook Sports. And that's one of my favorite things about SuperBook is they'll email you every single time you have a winning ticket just to give you a little reminder. And it's always in this, beautiful, welcoming message. You have a winning ticket. Congratulations. So I always love that. So
always
good day.
Celebration after a win.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to go, maybe find a beer or do something, have a little fun after we won that bet. Love some Wednesday afternoon matinee baseball betting. But I'm also excited for the NFL. You've got a pretty sweet setup at your apartment with the multiple TVs. I might have to try to emulate that myself. So good for you guys for being the first book to get all these lines out there. And I think it's also cool, like if for anyone listening out there, take a screenshot of the grid that Unit's talking about. At the end of the year, go back and compare and see where these games finished up or where the lines moved before the games had started. Because it is crazy, like the preseason perception of some of these teams versus where they end up at the end of the year.
Yeah, so you mentioned the Browns being historically bad and fading them and not believing in them. But do you feel the same way against the Lions, who've had pretty much a similar, maybe worse history than the Browns? Looking at just the first 6 weeks on this thing right here, they're favorites in 5 of their first 6 games, and they're favorites to win the NFC North for maybe the first time in either of our lifetimes.
That's interesting. I don't know what to make of that. And that's the other thing is you bring up like first 5-6 weeks, like that's when I love to dive in. Like I know that there's a lot of bettors that like to wait and see, like, they don't like to bet big in the first handful of weeks of the season because teams are trying to find their footing and find traction. I love the chaos. Give me the chaos of like not knowing what a team is going to be like out of the gate. Those are some of my favorite lines to bet. And it's also a good opportunity. I mean, you mentioned, divisional odds. Like if you're a believer in a team, like there's a lot of people that are believers in Detroit. You talk about Cleveland. If you like the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, if you think the Broncos could bounce back with Russell Wilson, it's also a good opportunity to shoot some darts on your divisional futures and let the chips fall where they may as the season progresses.
Yeah. Is there anybody that sticks out to you and when it comes to divisions?
Oh, man, you're putting me on the spot. I'll put it this way.
Ready for that?
No, I know because well, let me ask you this: do you think your Bears are winning the NFC North?
So
yeah. Look away.
When we were starting this rundown, you mentioned teams that stick out to bet in some of these futures or in games. I started writing the Bears. I literally on my notes I have a B, and then I just stopped. So because I'm gonna leave the bias off this show, and I'll let the team speak for themselves. But I do have high expectations for the Bears.
My favorite bet, and I'm pretty sure it's one that I made last year, and it's just because I have such a soft spot for this team. We just talked about the division. You're going to give me plus 250 odds for a motivated Lamar Jackson with John Harbaugh and OBJ to win the AFC North. Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin, in my opinion, are the creme de la creme of head coaches in the NFL, not named Bill Belichick. Plus 250 odds. The Bengals are at plus 125. They're good. I just think Baltimore, like this is the year they put it all together. I feel that way every year about Baltimore. But now that Lamar has his contract, Harbaugh's still Harbaugh. OBJ is the best wide receiver he's ever had. Lamar Jackson. You got Mark Andrews. That's one team that jumps out to me right away. That's not a favorite. Is Baltimore at plus 250 in the AFC North.
Yeah, that's another one that sticks out to me, mainly because I'm in the same boat as you. I think Harbaugh, in my opinion, is the best coach in the NFL. And then getting some weapons around Lamar, getting him that contract, and we could see Hopkins making his way to Baltimore.
Yeah, there's a couple of other divisions that not that I don't agree with the pricing, but I think there's some value in some other teams. One being locally here in the AFC West. Like, obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs are the creme de la creme. But we're talking about Sean Payton here with Denver, who is, a proven success of winning. Will the bottom ever fall out? Will there ever be some regression for Kansas City? I don't think it's coming. But for a team in Denver with Sean Payton and a Russell Wilson, who I think is bouncing back personally, plus 565 odds for them to win the division. That's worth it for me on a long shot bet. For a team that I think is going to be significantly improved. Nathaniel Hackett was a disaster. And I think Sean Payton rather is going to be able to, get the most out of Russell Wilson and company. So that's another team that I've got my eye on. Bias aside, you're going to give me plus 565 for the Broncos to win the division. I don't mind that whatsoever if you want to shoot a dart.
Yeah, I fell into that AFC West trap last year, and I ended up taking the Raiders in that losing ticket by about week 3. So I'm going to avoid anything that has to do with that division. When you got the Kansas City Chiefs in there, I think they're going to run through that division again this year. But I'm looking at another AFC division, and that's the AFC East. I think the Bills might be a little underwhelming this season. I'm not a believer in the Jets just yet. And the Patriots, I don't think, have what it takes to win it. The team I've got my eye on is the Dolphins that are sitting at 3-1. If Tua is healthy, that offense being so explosive as it is, I think it comes together for them. And I like the Dolphins to win the AFC East.
Yeah, I'm big time on the Dolphins as well. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with Rodgers and the Jets either. That one is it's tough because all of them are priced pretty similarly. But I like that. I don't mind that whatsoever. I'm a big Mike McDaniel fan, pride of Smoky Hill High School out here in Colorado. And they got Tyreek Hill. They just bring in Jalen Ramsey as well, who I'm a big fan of. So that's going to be that. In my opinion, that's the most fun division. That be the AFC East when it all kind of is shaken out. So I'm excited, man. Football in the mind, NBA finals, NHL finals. Like I said, you got to get those bets in with Superbook Sports. They got you covered from top to bottom with all your sports betting needs. But what else? Any other football thoughts? Any closing thoughts, words of wisdom before we get out of here, my friend?
No, nothing football related. I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to go enjoy myself on the beach in San Diego and enjoy some baseball out there. And I'll be doing the next episode live from the beach, hopefully with a few cocktails.
I am jealous of you. I'm debating if I want to book an impromptu flight to Miami. So maybe you'll be on the West Coast. I'll be on the East Coast, both sipping some Mai Tais and having a good time.
Hawaiian shirt themed episode next week.
Yeah, we might have to just do that. So good stuff, my friend. You're in Las Vegas, Nevada. People can follow Unit on Twitter at SuperBookUnit. I'm at MediaByAP. Any closing promos or anything you guys are doing for the NBA NHL finals you want to get off your chest?
Yeah, so we have for a new offer for all users in our states, up to $250 bonus when you sign up, deposit, and wager today. And in our newest market, Maryland, we'll give you up to $500 there. But make sure when you're at superbook.com, whatever market that you're in any of our 8 states, excluding Nevada, make sure to check out the Odds Boost tab because we've got a bunch of great same-game parlays. I know you've had a few of these same-game parlays, and actually a good majority of them have actually hit. We like to boost those same-game parlays, and those get up pretty early in the morning, and we got a variety of sports, especially for these playoff games. So Make sure you check that out. Visit superbook.com.
I double down on that. Get in on those boosts. I'll try to chef up some winners for us throughout this NBA final. So good stuff. Unit is in Vegas. I'm AP in Colorado. Appreciate you guys, as always, for watching the Fast Five presented by our friends over at Superbook Sports. Get those bets in with Superbook. You won't regret it. And if you're in Las Vegas, check out the mothership that is the Superbook Sportsbook located in the Westgate. But my friend, enjoy sunny San Diego. Maybe we'll do, Hawaiian shirt theme next week. And, we'll see how these finals shake out between the NBA and the NHL. Good stuff, my friend.